Good morning. I'm always interested in systems because I have a tendency, a propensity to build them myself. So I always like to look at systems, the organization, the thoughtfulness that goes into creating systems has always appealed. And I don't dismiss anything out of hand. I mentioned before, if there's something, you never know where who is your messenger or where your message will come from. I've had it come from advertisements. I've had it come from glimpses of television. I've had it come from friends. And even from less than friends. Not exactly foes, because I really don't have any foes and never have really had one. But like everybody else, there's people that I enjoy their company more than others. But I never rule out. Sometimes it's been the headlines in a newspaper, a few words in a book, words I've always inspired. But I'm talking about systems here. And the reason I'm talking about systems is that Myers-Briggs type indicator, MBTI. I've known about it for quite some time, but other than just taking the maybe overly simplistic tests and getting a category, but quickly dismissing it. But as time has passed, I've had a renewed interest in this and found myself after several tests and rigorous, again, self-examination, found myself to be an INFJ. And as I do, once I get into something, I just explore it to death. Fortunately, we have such a handy tool like the internet, and I have researched, watched all the YouTubes and read all the text that I could, including criticism of this system. One of the biggest being that neuroses isn't included with the four primary categories of intuition, thinking, feeling, and judging. Did I get that right? Give me a second. Let me check here. So I have intuition, feeling, sensation, intuition, feeling, and thinking. And okay, the major criticism is that neuroses, as people see, many people see neurosis as deserves its own category, and it criticizes. But as all systems are not without the use, I appreciate the time and effort that went into this. And again, don't dismiss things out of hand. You can cherry pick and take what you want and discard the rest. But it's about useful. Is this useful to you? Does it serve any purpose? And one of the things about INFJ that really hit home with me was that we use our words. Bo Miller, a person that's done a lot of enjoyable YouTube, doing good work out there, Bo Miller, INFJ, and he talked about, I'm going to take a quote from him and I want to give him credit where credit's due. INFJs serve with their words. Well, when I read this, it just about literally knocked me off my chair because I couldn't have said it better. Serve with our words. And as I have always fancied myself a wordsmith, someone that uses words easily, hopefully correctly. One of the things I battle with is that my written and reading vocabulary is so much larger than my spoken vocabulary, that I'm trying to increase my word usage. But sometimes I'm a little off on pronunciation, and because I've never heard it spoken, I've read it. So I try to go to these little apps that they have that will say the word for you. They'll pronounce the word for you. But I know I sometimes stumble. Mind is clear. Tongue maybe less nimble. But I do make an effort. Wordsmith, just as a blacksmith works with metal to create whatever he was attempting to create. Horseshoes, knives, plowshares, wagon wheels. And so too, as a wordsmith, it's my trade. And I've always been concerned about the other and never quite sure what is best way for me to help others. But I ignored that my help, my service was through my words. And it was in this spirit that this YouTube channel, Zen with a Smile, was created to help others. And I've never deluded myself that my pool of people that need my help might be rather small and could be seen as a limitation. But I don't see it this way at all. I'd like to get my message, I'd like to expand my base, I'd like to get my message to as many people as want to hear, that could benefit, that I could serve with my words. And we're coming up on 1 year that I've been doing these sharings. I have about 160 plus episodes as I speak. And maybe time will grow my audience. Who knows? But all I have to say on this matter, all that's important to me is that if I help one person, and even the remotest way, I feel that my efforts have been successful. My efforts have been considerable. 160 half an hour episodes in just under a year means almost or a little better than a video every day and a half. And to get this together was to get my presentations together, to gather enough information to presume that I had anything worth sharing was 30, 40, closer to 50, and even 50 plus years in the making. I remember deciding last year that it was time to do something. It was time to make my teachings available to any that might find them of interest and possibly helpful. And begin the process of my first video. And the technical side of things, the lighting needs work. Thanks to my friend and brother Matthew Lien, I'm having a lavalier mic, a wired lavalier mic that's improved the sound greatly. And once I reach that point, I'm not satisfied with this lighting. I need to have some work. But that's not my priority. My priority is putting my words together in a coherent, cogent, and most importantly, useful structure to reach any of those that I might be able to. And even as a teacher, many years university instructor, many years, thousands, tens of thousands of students that I've taught. And I had a goal. I didn't, self-flattery was never very appealing to me. I didn't flatter myself that I would make some kind of huge impact. Always a man to set modest goals, except the biggest one, which is to wake up. But what I had to do to maintain myself, to give back to the society which I found myself in, was teach. And primarily, my biggest concern was trying to share about cognition, helping them to learn to think. And as most things, a teacher points the way by becoming an example, by offering encouraging words. But when I was teaching my students, my goal was that they would leave with 5 things that I taught or shared with them. And they would remember those 5 things. Whatever they might be, whatever I said that might have resonated with an individual student at a particular time. And I've had some feedback. I've had students thank me and remembered some of the things I said. But this modest goal, I've always felt a tremendous load on my shoulders. I remember Chakrapani, who was a Vedic astrologer, who is a Vedic astrologer to the stars, very important in Hollywood now. But at the time I met him 30 years ago, closer to 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 35, he was living in the ashram of Muktananda Baba, and he had been a family astrologer, and it was his genealogy was 2,000 years of Vedic astrology. And I remember him saying once to me that I acted as if I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. And he laughed so hard, he thought this was the funniest thing ever. And I remember that I was taking exception, because indeed I did feel that I had the weight of the world on my shoulders, while understanding that it was a self-assumed mantle. But as that load has lightened, through the understanding of the universality of who and what we are, we're all of, from, and are the same substance, the same essential elements combined in beautiful, beautiful, unique variety. But it's the essentialness of this. It's in the recognition that we're here to learn. And who am I to say who or what your teacher or teachings may be? What is necessary for you to reach the stage of wondering about existence, wondering about your place in existence, wondering about your uniqueness, and beginning to understand the ordinariness of my being and my efforts. Somehow carrying the weight of the world on the shoulders did two things that weren't constructive. Separated me because I wasn't amongst the suffering, even though my personal life gave obvious lie to this misunderstanding on my part. I was no more or no less immune from the effects of our mass hysteria, for lack of a better term. But it was, things can come to you when you least expect. And thanks to Bo Miller, when he coined that phrase, and I don't know if he borrowed it, but I'm giving credit to him, and he can accept or defer to another source. But he's the only one I've seen it come from. We serve with our words. And not only validated what I'm attempting to do with this YouTube channel, Zen with a Smile, it showed me that somehow I had stumbled across my best way to serve the others. Some people, it's through their action. These are the karma yogis, they're selfless action. Some of us is through their devotion, their compassion, their acceptance, their surrender, the bhakti yogis. And some, through discipline, consistent effort, have managed to silence the mind. This is the Raja yogis, the royal way, the path of the elite, the path of the chosen few. And then there's the jhana yogi or jhana yoga. A practitioner of yoga is a Practitioner of yoga is a yogi. Yeah. And the fourth, jhana yoga, the process of gathering information, refining, sorting, filing, storing, information that becomes knowledge. And knowledge given to the heart is sorted to the knowable and the realm of the unknown, sorted through the heart. And this is like all the different yogas, this is a continual, ongoing, never-ending effort. So different parts of our being are emphasized in the different yogic paths. So I suggest that you really examine yourself and see, do you consider yourself a person of action? Can you achieve unselfish action, anonymous, without craving of recognition or reward? Can you love to the point that you can accept, that you can surrender, that you can worship both your teacher, your guru, your sutras, your mantras, through chanting and singing, and be liberated this way, an all-encompassing compassion that envelops your being and spreads like a virus to all who encounter you, to all who surround you, to the point that even those that don't have any direct contact with you are enveloped in these waves, these ripples of love, joy, peace, and compassion. Are you strongly self-disciplined? Are you able to begin the journey from quieting, stilling, with the ultimate goal of silencing your mind? Particularly the first goes the monkey mind, and then they say that Clarity only comes after the larger mind is silenced. Or are you amongst those, as I am, who value the mind, who recognize the limitations, but don't ignore the possibilities, the usefulness? Because maybe you have an answer for this question, but I never found a satisfactory answer. Why were we given these fine minds only to have to ultimately overcome and leave them behind, while claiming that they're without use in our spiritual inquiry, on our spiritual journey? Well, 30 years of trying, 30 years of seeking clarity, which I readily admit is the most alien concept for me. I have had bouts, I call them bouts of clarity. Just have had bouts with bliss. But I found both of these conditions equally contrary, equally unsustainable in the realms of my own personal existence. Maybe the time of clarity lies in the future for me, as I no longer have to manifest in a physical body, where it becomes my choice, as it has been for most Buddhas, even though their personal responsibility, their personal bondage to their body has lapsed. They need not come back, but they come back of choice, of love, of compassion. But perhaps they can reside in a constant state of clarity. Now, bliss is something different. Bliss is available at any time for me, whereas clarity is elusive and just visits by its own design. Bliss is right there, but I can't maintain my physical existence while enraptured in a state of bliss. And I think that this is how the Buddhas ultimately leave their bodies behind. I doubt that it's in a state of clarity that they leave their body. Instead, it's in a state of bliss, where it just becomes impossible to, or increasingly difficult at best, to maintain the physical form. And I've been exposed to at least one man who's on the precipice of, who's battling to come back from states of bliss, to continue serving those that seek his help. But there'll come a point when he will just pass. Give in to the inevitable, because this is an inevitable state for all of us. Now, I certainly don't claim that what happens after you're accepted this state of bliss and are no longer able to maintain a physical form. I just know that there's continual evolution, because that is the way of the world. There's a continual blissful people still got work to do. There's always room for growth. Maybe they'll learn how to balance the compassion, clarity, equanimity, and bliss to carry all these elements simultaneously and in equality in their light body, or whatever their form will be after we leave this body. And maybe you can reverse it. Remember, maybe you can look at which condition is the most appealing and satisfactory for you. Is it clarity? Is it bliss? Is it compassion? Or is it equanimity? Choose a path. Choose a result. You can do it the other way around. Choose a result and bring it forward. Follow the path that leads you to the quality that you'd most likely, most happily embody. I don't think it happens. It hadn't happened that way for me. I just kept bumbling around. It took me a long time, 30 years, to wake up from my attempts at Raja Yoga. As I mentioned, this was all that seemed to be available to me as a Western seeker. But I'm a stubborn guy. I just don't give up easily. But I finally fell comfortably. It was only through surrendering and ultimately forgiving and acceptance that one size doesn't fit all. We're unique, even as we only reflect our commonalities.